The first time I realized my family planned to destroy me, they were applauding. The sound filled the top-floor boardroom like controlled thunder, polite, measured, expensive. Hands meeting hands around a long black table carved from a single slab of obsidian glass. Smiles calibrated to perfection. Approval. Packaged. Hale Holdings' highest floor was designed to erase instinct. Scent dampeners in the vents. Neutral tones. Filtered light. But you can't fully civilize predators. Not when 20 alphas sit in one room, each unconsciously claiming territory with the angle of their shoulders, the spread of their knees, the slow dominance of eye contact. I took my usual seat 2 chairs to the right of my father, close enough to be useful, far enough to not be seen as succession. My name glowed on the wall-sized screen behind him. "Matthew has done extraordinary work this quarter," my father said, his voice warm, proud, public. "Our expansion into the coastal markets, the compliance restructuring, the internal audits, none of that would have been possible without his strategic vision." More applause. I inclined my head, the way I'd been trained to. Beta politeness. No challenge. No claim. My temples throbbed faintly. The room was hot in the way only suppressed aggression makes heat. Dry, metallic, crawling just under the skin. I breathed through it. Then my father smiled and added, "Which is why we've decided Matthew should step away from Project Blackridge." The words slid into the air like a thin blade. Effective immediately, one of the directors chimed in smoothly. "So we can focus on internal alignment." Internal alignment. My gaze flicked, almost imperceptibly, around the table. No one met my eyes. The screen behind my father shifted. My name was replaced by another, Evan Hale. My younger brother sat straighter, lips curving. If this story caught you, subscribe. More are waiting. Alpha. Beautiful. Empty in the way only people groomed for power could afford to be. Our future needs a face, my father continued. And Evan represents the next evolution of Hale Holdings. Another round of applause. My brother inclined his head, exactly the way our father had taught him. Claiming. Receiving. I watched legal language populate the screen beside his name. Restructuring. Risk reallocation. Oversight transfer. Small words. Heavy consequences. My headache sharpened. Heat crept up my spine. The faint copper taste of restrained instinct spread on my tongue. Somewhere deep, the animal in me shifted and found no room to move. They spoke for another 20 minutes. Numbers. Markets. Forecasts. I took notes. I always did. But my attention snagged on phrases that bent the wrong way. Liability consolidation. Executive accountability streamlining. Centralized operational authorship. Authorship. When the meeting adjourned, they stood in a ritual wave of tailored suits and practiced dominance. My father clasped my shoulder. "Proud of you, son," he said softly. "For the room. This transition will suit you." I returned his smile. In the corridor outside, the air was cooler. Real. The city spread beneath the glass like a living circuit board. I walked 3 steps before voices drifted from behind the partially closed conference door. Low, male, relaxed. "When it collapses," one of the directors said, almost amused, "Hale already has the perfect fall guy." A pause. A soft chuckle. Understanding didn't hit like a blow. It sank. Cold. Methodical. Rearranging everything it touched. I stood very still. Let the words settle into their proper places. Then my assistant rounded the corner, tablet pressed to her chest, face tight. "Matthew," she said, lowering her voice. "One more thing. The board approved an external investor for the upcoming negotiations." I looked at her. She swallowed. "Christian Crow will be joining the table." The name landed with weight, and for the first time that day, the quiet terror found my pulse. The executive negotiation suite was built to make predators behave. Security glass lined the walls, faintly mirrored so no one could see their own reflections too clearly. A neutral scent field pulsed softly through hidden vents, flattening instinct into something almost manageable. Coffee waited in flawless porcelain cups, bitter, expensive, strategically calming. It didn't work. Christian Crow walked in 10 minutes late, which was its own form of dominance. He didn't rush, didn't apologize. His presence bent the room first, shoulders loose, posture open, expression pleasant in the way of someone who knows exactly how dangerous he is and doesn't need to prove it. Dark suit, no tie. Alpha, unmistakably, but sharpened by something colder than hierarchy. Gentleman. Miss Hale. His gaze flicked to the board, polite, dismissive, then landed on me, and stayed. Ah, so that was the game. You must be Matthew, he said. Hale's strategist, not director, not Mr. Hale. A role, a function. I rose, extended my hand. His grip was firm without being crushing, warm, deliberate. Matthew Hale, I corrected calmly. Director of strategy. The corner of his mouth lifted. Of course, you are. We sat. Lawyers spoke first. Numbers followed. Christian listened with the faintly indulgent expression of someone watching a familiar trick. When it was his turn, he leaned back slightly, crossing one ankle over the opposite knee. From what I've seen, he said, glancing at the projections, Hale Holdings has built an impressive facade. But your expansion models assume compliance environments that don't exist outside curated markets. A few board members stiffened. His gaze returned to me. I'm curious which alpha approved those projections. There it was. The public dismissal. The subtle invitation to step back. I didn't. They weren't approved by an alpha, I said evenly. They were stress-tested across 3 regulatory ecosystems and weighted against historical enforcement volatility. I tapped my tablet. The screen shifted. Your conclusion is based on static assumptions. Mine aren't. Christian's brows rose almost imperceptibly. Show me, he said. So I did. Quietly. Precisely. I dismantled his premise point by point. Not with force, but with structure. Introduced variables he hadn't accounted for. Highlighted blind spots in his comparative models. Offered corrections without humiliation. The room grew still. Christian watched me the way one predator watches another approach the edge of its territory. Not hostile. Evaluating. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. Then he smiled. Not wide, not friendly, like a knife reflecting light. Well, he murmured. That's unexpected. A ripple of discomfort passed through the board. He turned to them. It appears Hale Holdings' greatest asset doesn't sit at the head of the table. Humor flickered through me despite myself. I'm relieved, I said. I'd hate to manage expectations. His eyes darkened. Amused. After another hour of strategic sparring, the meeting adjourned. The board filtered out in clusters of tension and relief. I was gathering my tablet when Christian spoke again. Matthew. I looked up. Walk with me. We moved toward the glass wall, overlooking the city. From this height, traffic resembled flowing code. You're not what I expected, he said. What were you expecting? I asked. A well-trained mouthpiece. His gaze cut sideways. Instead, I found a spine. I didn't know whether to bristle or thank him. I'd like a private analytical brief, he continued. Your personal assessment of Hale Holdings' risk exposure. That's not standard procedure. No, he agreed pleasantly. It's interest. Something in my chest shifted. Subtle. Uncomfortable. I'll consider it, I said. He smiled again. Smaller. I hope you do. As he turned away, I realized 2 things at once. Christian Crow had not come here to negotiate, and for the first time since that boardroom applause, someone wasn't looking past me. He was looking straight through. The Hale estate had never been a home. It was a monument. Stone, steel, and glass arranged to impress and intimidate in equal measure. The gates recognized my vehicle before I reached them. The driveway curved like a ceremonial path. Security drones glided silently above the tree line. Even the air felt regulated. Legacy didn't breathe. It circulated. Dinner was served in the West Hall, beneath a ceiling so high voices dissolved before they could become arguments. Long table, minimalist plates, family staff moving with ritual precision, eyes lowered, steps measured. My father sat at the head, perfectly at ease. Evan lounged 2 seats away, already in the position meant to be his. You look tired, Matthew, my father said as I took my place. Concern. Sculpted. Working too hard again? I always work, I replied. He smiled, pleased. Yes. And we've always been grateful. Always. A server poured wine I wouldn't drink. Evan leaned back, gaze skimming me. He does love his spreadsheets. Some people are born to command. He lifted his glass. Others, to optimize. I didn't look at him. I optimized Blackridge, I said calmly, and North Shore, and the coastal acquisition that paid for this haul. And yet, my father interjected smoothly, those were never leadership projects. They were stabilization initiatives. Stabilization. The word landed heavier than any insult. Someone has to keep the engine from overheating, he continued. That's a gift, Matthew. Not everyone is meant to steer. The animal in me stirred, restless, pressing against old training. Don't challenge. Don't posture. Don't bare teeth where none will be acknowledged. I redirected 12 high-risk partnerships into compliant channels, I said. I shut down 3 laundering pipelines before they surfaced. And we applauded, Evan said lightly. Like good patrons. Pet brain. The phrase hovered in his eyes even if he didn't speak it. I felt the old grief rise. The familiar ache of being necessary but never chosen. Halfway through the meal, my father set down his cutlery. We've decided to redistribute some of your current oversight, he said. To ease your transition. Transition. Blackridge Analytics will move under Evan's portfolio, along with regulatory risk. Evan's smile widened. I held my expression. And North Shore? I asked. Already reassigned, my father replied. You should feel relieved. You've carried those burdens long enough. Burdens. That night, in my wing of the estate. Too quiet, too large. I activated my private terminal. Internal access still open. For now. I began copying data, not the flashy files. The connective ones. Responsibility chains. Approval pathways. Financial reroutes. Legal anchors. As directories populated my private drive, something inside me went still. Clarity was not loud. It was surgical. They weren't lightening my load. They were rearranging the blast radius. And for the first time, standing alone in the monument built on my work, I understood. Family was just another corporation, and I was no longer on its org chart. My private office overlooked the city's southern sector, where the lights never quite dimmed, and the industrial districts glowed like veins under skin. It was past midnight. 3 screens floated in front of me. Financial architecture on the left, legal matrices on the right, internal authority maps layered through the center like a ghosted nervous system. Coffee cooled untouched by my hand. At first, everything looked normal. Then, I changed the filters. What appeared were not projects. They were chains. Responsibility chains. Every high-risk initiative over the last 5 years. Every compliance override. Every emergency authorization that had prevented external scrutiny. All of them rerouted. Subtly. Elegantly. Toward me. Not operationally. Legally. My fingers paused above the interface. I isolated one structure. Then another. Then 6 more. Shell subsidiaries nested under legitimate fronts. Delayed reporting entities. Contingency firms designed to hold explosive liability when things went wrong. They formed a pattern so clean it was almost beautiful. Almost. I leaned closer. Breath shallow. If Blackridge collapsed, if North Shore was audited, if even one of these shells ruptured under investigation, the legal weight would not distribute across the board. It would converge. On my signature. On my department. On me. Heat flooded my chest. My hand trembled. A low, instinctive pressure built behind my ribs, the beginning of something older than thought. My vision sharpened at the edges. The faintest distortion rippled through the glass reflection of my face. No. I pressed my palm flat to the desk, grounding. My stomach lurched. Acid burned the back of my throat. I swallowed hard and reached for the coffee, but the smell alone turned my gut. The room suddenly felt too small. I overlaid the timelines. Restructuring approvals. Project transfers. My removal from Blackridge. They aligned. Perfectly. They hadn't started planning this when the market shifted. They had shifted the market to justify the plan. A sound escaped my throat, too sharp to be a laugh, too broken to be a breath. Fear hit first, not the animal kind, the human kind, the kind that imagines headlines, courtrooms, silence from people who used to say your name with pride. Then, betrayal, heavy, familiar, reaching back into childhood where praise had always come with conditions, and beneath that, anger. But there was nowhere for it to go, no boardroom to disrupt, no brother to confront, no system that would acknowledge the wound. Only documents, cold, precise, patient. I zoomed out. The full architecture filled the central screen, and I saw it. I was not being removed from the company. I was being filled, like a reservoir, like a pressure tank, like the designated point of failure. My hands stilled. My breathing slowed. The nausea didn't leave, but something else replaced it. A terrible clarity. They weren't making space for Evan. They were loading me. And when it all collapsed, they wouldn't need to push. They would only need to step aside. The rooftop lounge was one of those spaces corporations pretended were casual. Low light. Too soft leather. Glass walls curving into the night. A bar that stocked nothing you could pronounce without money. The neutral scent field was weaker here, diluted by open air and city wind. Christian stood near the glass, one hand resting on the rail, jacket draped over the back of a chair as if he might leave at any moment. He didn't offer me a drink. He watched me approach. "Your company's corruption risk curve is lying," he said instead. I stopped 2 steps from him. "Good evening to you too." He tilted his head. "You don't deny it. Because you didn't make a statement," I replied. "You made a provocation." A faint smile. Approval, maybe. He turned his tablet toward me. Several charts glowed against the dark. Not Hale's official projections. These were reconstructed, reverse-engineered. "You assume Hale Holdings' moral trajectory follows its power curve," he said. "It doesn't. It bends. Every time it should spike, something suppresses it." My pulse ticked once harder. Systems don't self-correct like that. People do. "You're implying an internal corrective force," I said carefully. "I'm implying someone keeps the animal sedated." Our gazes locked. The wind stirred, carrying faint city heat and the edge of his scent, clean, sharp, dangerous in the way of winter. "Why are you here, Christian?" I asked. "To verify whether Hale Holdings is a threat," he said easily. And I keep finding the same anomaly." He zoomed out. Layers of interventions appeared. Compliance blocks, deal terminations, resource redirections, always subtle, always effective, always intersecting my department. "You ever shut down a deal that would have made you richer but cost someone else their life?" he asked suddenly. The question hit harder than it should have. "Yes," I said. "You ever sabotage your own projections because they'd empower the wrong partner?" "Yes." "Ever watch your family benefit from something you quietly bled to stop?" My jaw tightened. "Yes." He studied me, not as an alpha, not as a rival, as an equation. "Then you're either the most disciplined predator I've ever met," he said, "or you're not one at all." "Power doesn't require fangs," I replied. His smile sharpened. "That's where we disagree." We argued then, not loudly, not emotionally, about hierarchy, about inevitability, about whether systems corrupt or merely reveal. He believed power was rot. I believed it was exposure. Our words moved like blades, and somewhere between his contempt for dynasties and my refusal to claim one, something coiled tighter in the air. Interest, recognition, heat that had nothing to do with instinct. He broke eye contact first. "I want to compare data," he said. "Your internal analytics. My external reconstructions. That's confidential. That's valuable. That's dangerous," I countered. "Exactly." He picked up his jacket. "Send me your personal brief," he added lightly. "Not the one Hale Holdings would authorize. The one you actually believe." Then he paused, close enough now that I could feel the quiet pressure of him. Not dominance, not threat. Attention, Matthew, he said softly. You don't protect a system like this unless you think something inside it is worth saving. And with that, he walked away, leaving me with my questions, and the growing certainty that Christian Crow wasn't here to hunt my company. He was here to find me. Christian's private office didn't look like an alpha's den. No trophies, no aggressive architecture, no territorial excess. Glass walls, muted light, a wide desk cleared of everything but a single console and 2 cups of untouched coffee. The city hovered outside like a living circuit. The space smelled faintly of paper and ozone. Clean, neutral, controlled. He didn't ask me to sit. He activated the wall display. A lattice of data bloomed across the glass. Financial vectors, corporate genealogies, regulatory interventions. The structure was complex enough that my instinctive response was professional admiration. Then I recognized the pattern. My breath caught. These aren't Hale reports, I said. No, Christian replied. They're what Hale reports hide. He gestured, and the image shifted. Nodes illuminated, intersections, interruptions. Every time a projected profit spike should have crossed into illicit territory, something had redirected it. Every time a partnership veered toward exploitation, a regulatory barrier had appeared. Every time an acquisition should have fed something criminal, it had quietly starved instead. You see it, he said. I did. The interventions weren't loud. They were elegant, strategic, mine. How did you get this? I asked. I didn't get it, he corrected. I built it. From external traces, regulatory delays, contract failures, market behaviors that didn't make sense unless someone inside was constantly choosing restraint. He isolated a layer. My department glowed through the structure like a nervous system. Every path that should have turned toxic bends away when it reaches you. He enlarged a sector. Blackridge, North Shore. The coastal acquisitions. Files I remembered fighting over. Deals I'd optimized. Projects I'd rerouted until they no longer resembled what my family wanted. You throttled extraction models. You engineered compliance delays. You designed internal audits that caught what no one else was meant to see, Christian continued. You cost your own company billions. I stared at the screen. I remembered those nights. The exhaustion, the quiet negotiations, the compromises I'd framed as duty. I thought I was minimizing damage, I said. Christian looked at me. You were governing, he said simply. Then he brought up the final overlay. Projected futures, one where I had not been there. The curves spiked. The shells bloomed. The monster emerged. The Hale Empire transformed, unmistakably, into something criminal. You want to know why your company hasn't crossed the line? He asked. I didn't answer. He did it for me. Your family didn't build an empire. You kept a monster on a leash. The words landed wrong. Not sharp. Heavy. They displaced something in me. I felt it physically, a hollowing beneath my sternum, like a structure giving way. I'm not, I started. Not what? Not in charge. Not alpha. Not responsible. The sentence collapsed. My vision blurred. I looked away, focusing on the city lights until they steadied. All my life, my worth had been described in proximity, support, stability, utility. No one had ever framed me as the source. The origin. The reason. You didn't just protect something worth saving. Christian continued quietly. You made it worth saving. My hands curled at my sides. Disbelief rose first. Reflexive. Protective. Then grief. For every moment I'd accepted being less because it was safer. For every time I'd swallowed the knowledge that my choices mattered more than my name. And beneath that, something unfamiliar. A fragile, dangerous recognition, not of what I did, but of who I had been, even when no one was watching. Christian didn't speak again. He let me stand there in front of the file that shouldn't exist. The one that finally showed me. I had never been a function. I had been the architecture. The training floor was buried beneath the east wing of the estate, where the walls were reinforced, and the cameras were polite enough to look away. It smelled like disinfectant and old adrenaline. The space had been designed for one purpose, to remind us what we were. I hadn't been there in years. Evan was waiting. Shirt discarded. Sleeves rolled. Bare feet on the black mat, posture loose in the way alphas adopt when they know they own the ground. The lights caught the faint gold in his eyes. "Funny," he said lightly. "How fast you come running when you stop being useful upstairs." "I didn't come for you," I replied. He smiled wider. "You never do. That's why you always lose." The door sealed behind me with a soft hydraulic sigh. He circled once, slow, evaluating, enjoying it. "Father's impressed," Evan continued. "You handled the transition beautifully. No scene, no mess. I didn't move. You know," he went on, "they were worried you'd fight, that you'd make it ugly." "They?" I asked. "The board, legal, father." He shrugged. "Me." My jaw tightened. "So you admit it," I said. "You were always the plan." He stopped in front of me. "Of course you were," he said gently. "You think anyone would let you get this close to the core without a purpose?" My hands curled. "You're not built to lead, Matt. You're built to buffer." His gaze flicked over me. "To absorb, to be blamed." The words struck where they were meant to. "You don't even have the decency to bare your teeth," he added. "All that control, all that restraint, like a well-trained animal." Something in him shifted. The air thickened. Dominance rolled outward, heavy and deliberate. A familiar pressure, honed through a lifetime of hierarchy. The animal in me stirred in response, instinctively reaching for form, for claws, for the language I'd been taught to answer with. Evan stepped closer. "You feel it, don't you?" he murmured. "That pull, that weakness. You don't belong among alphas. You belong under them." His hand caught my collar, and he tried to force it, tried to drag the response out of me, tried to trigger the shift, the flinch, the submission or the violence. Either would have satisfied him. Heat surged. My vision sharpened. For a breath, the world narrowed to teeth and pulse, and the old promise of power. Then I saw Christian's screen, the architecture, the monster, and my own reflection in it. I didn't shift. I didn't snarl. I didn't strike. I lifted my hand and calmly removed his from my collar. The movement startled him more than any blow. "We're done," I said. Evan stared. "You don't get to decide that." "I just did." His dominance crashed harder, a wave meant to break me. It didn't. I stepped back, then another. Then I turned and walked away. Behind me, I heard him laugh. Sharp, uncertain. "You'll regret this," he called. "You can't survive without us." I didn't answer. The doors opened. Cool air rushed in, and for the first time in my life, I left the training floor without blood on my hands. Or theirs. I crossed the estate without looking back. Didn't shift. Didn't bow. Didn't carry anything but myself. And when the gates closed behind me, the rupture finally came. Not in the pack. In me. Christian's apartment overlooked the river, all dark water and slow reflections. No guards, no visible hierarchy. Just height, glass, and a quiet that didn't feel manufactured. He let me in without ceremony. I stood near the door longer than necessary, aware of the way my body still hummed from the estate. Residual dominance pressure, the ghost of a shift that hadn't happened. Christian watched me with a kind of stillness that wasn't predatory. "Sit," he said. I didn't. "I just left," I told him. He didn't ask where. "Do you know why I targeted Hale Holdings?" he asked instead. "To invest," I said, a breath of a laugh. "To dismantle." I looked at him. "I don't break companies because they're weak," he continued. "I break them because they're dangerous. Your family's empire was building towards something criminal. I intended to accelerate that. Expose it. Let it burn." My hands clenched slowly. "And then I met you." Silence thickened the space. "You weren't supposed to exist," he said. "Not in that structure. Not like that. You disrupted the trajectory." Which meant either my analysis was wrong. His gaze lifted to mine. Or you were the only thing holding it back. I didn't do it alone. I said. No, he agreed. You did it invisibly. The words struck deeper than accusation. I don't know who I am without them, I admitted quietly. The truth surprised me as it left my mouth. The Hale name had always been the architecture around my life. The excuse, the shield, the cage. Christian stepped closer. Then answer me this, he said. What are you without their name? I searched myself for something rehearsed. There was nothing. I don't know, I said. His eyes softened, not with pity, but with something like recognition. That's terrifying, he murmured. And it's the first honest thing you've said about yourself. I huffed weakly. You say that like it's a compliment. It is, he said. It means you're not done yet. We stood too close. I could feel him. Not dominance, not heat. Attention, awareness. The careful distance of someone who knew exactly what crossing it would mean. You're not what I thought you were, he said. And you are? I asked. He hesitated. A man who confuses destruction with purpose, he admitted. The admission hung between us, fragile. My pulse skidded. Without thinking, I lifted my hand. Didn't touch him. Just hovered. He didn't move away. For a suspended breath, the city's reflection trembled across the glass and something quiet and dangerous unfolded between us. Not hunger, not instinct. Choice. Then he stepped back. I let my hand fall. We both looked away, almost at the same time. Fear returned first, of what was shifting, of what could not be unlearned. Stay, he said, meaning the night. I can't, I replied, meaning everything. He nodded once. I left. But the question followed me out into the hall, into the elevator, into the quiet of my own breathing. What was I without their name? And why did the not knowing feel like the beginning of something rather than the end? The first headline reached my phone at 6:12 a.m. Hale strategist linked to emerging financial irregularities. By 6:14, there were 3 more. By 6:20, my face was everywhere. Screens in elevators, office lobby projections. The silent glow of news feeds sliding my name into narratives already decided. The wording was careful. Under investigation, preliminary findings, sources indicate internal mismanagement. My name appeared exactly as often as the company's. Never my father's, never the board's, never Evan's. My comm buzzed nonstop. Media requests, legal advisories, internal pings marked urgent by people who hadn't spoken to me in years. Then the emergency board call came through. The grid filled with faces I knew by posture more than expression. Some carefully neutral, some already relieved. Matthew, one of the directors began, voice modulated for record. We need clarification on several compliance structures that originated under your department. Clarification. They spoke of shell entities, of delayed disclosures, of exposure, each point anchored to my authorization, each framed as a personal overreach. My father's square lit briefly. He didn't speak. He didn't look at me. The silence was surgical. I listened. I answered only what procedure demanded. When the call ended, my apartment felt too quiet. Christian arrived 20 minutes later without calling. He took in my face, the screens still scrolling behind me. They moved faster than I expected, he said. They moved exactly when they planned to, I replied. He held out his tablet. I can dismantle this, redirect the narrative, expose the architecture, your father, the board, Evan. I didn't reach for it. He frowned. They're trying to bury you. They're trying to use me, I corrected. Matthew, he said sharply. Let me burn it down. The familiar heat threaded his words, the promise of counterattack, of teeth, of spectacle. I closed my eyes once, saw the training floor, the leash, the file that shouldn't exist. If I struck back the way they expected, I would still be playing their game. No, I said. His jaw tightened. No, I won't weaponize what I am to protect what they built. They're destroying you. They built the trap, I said quietly. I'm just refusing to decorate it. He searched my face. What are you planning? He asked. Not revenge, I replied. Release. My phone lit again. Another headline. Another analyst. Another image of me in a frame chosen by someone else. Panic surged, then passed, leaving something colder, clearer. They think I'll beg, I said. Or bargain. Or claw my way back into relevance. And you won't? I met his eyes. I'm going to walk into their boardroom, I said, and tell the truth. Not for absolution. Not for control. For rupture. Christian exhaled slowly. A dangerous smile ghosted his mouth. That, he murmured, is much more frightening. For the first time since the trap closed, I felt it. Not safety, but direction. And I stepped into it. The boardroom looked exactly the same. Glass. Steel. City suspended beneath our feet like a circuit waiting to be completed. Same long black table. Same seats. Same faint pulse of scent dampeners trying and failing to civilize instinct. The difference was that this time, everyone stood when I entered. Not out of respect, out of anticipation. I took my usual place. 2 chairs to the right of my father. Close enough to be useful, far enough to be blamed. The wall display ignited automatically, cycling through the morning's damage control slides. Headlines, stock fluctuations, regulatory notices. My face framed in careful language. Matthew, the board chair began, folding his hands. Before we proceed, we want to acknowledge your cooperation in this delicate moment. Cooperation. My father didn't look at me. Evan did. He smiled. Before you continue, I said calmly, I'd like to add context. A subtle ripple moved the table. I connected my tablet. The slides vanished. The architecture appeared. Responsibility chains, shell networks, temporal alignments. The room shifted. This wasn't what they'd prepared for. I won't dispute the structures you've identified, I said. They exist. They carry my authorization. That was intentional. Several directors leaned forward. My father's gaze lifted at last. But not in the way you're presenting them. I expanded the view. Intervention markers bloomed like cauterized wounds across the system. Every one of these shells was built to contain, I continued. Every delay engineered to interrupt. Every approval crafted to reroute. I isolated a projection. Without these decisions, Hale Holdings would have crossed the criminal threshold 3 years ago. Murmurs. Disbelief. Calculation. I shifted to the comparative futures. One clean. One monstrous. This is the company you were building, I said, my voice steady. And this is the company I prevented. My father rose slowly. That's a very convenient narrative, he said. You expect us to believe you were the liability sink? I finished. Yes. Silence. Then I brought up the final layer. The redistribution timeline. My removal. The legal convergence. The trap. This, I said, is your design. The boardroom no longer felt neutral. It smelled like adrenaline. You loaded the structures, I went on. Then reassigned oversight. Then triggered exposure. You didn't discover a failure. You scheduled one. My father's expression didn't break, but something in his posture did. You taught me to build systems that survive predators, I said, meeting his eyes at last. You just never intended me to protect anyone from you. A sound escaped someone at the table. Grief rose then, not loud, not dramatic, the kind that settles behind the sternum when something essential finally fractures. I won't defend myself, I said quietly, and I won't compete for a throne designed to rot. I touched my tablet again. A single document filled the screen. My resignation. I'm stepping down as director of strategy, I said. Effective immediately. My full report package will be delivered to federal and regulatory bodies within the hour. Evan shot to his feet. You can't. I can, I replied. Because for the first time, I wasn't asking. I'm not your heir, I continued. I'm not your shield. And I'm not your scapegoat. I looked at the board, at the men and women who had spent decades perfecting the art of survival without accountability. You built a system that eats what it fears, I said. I'm done feeding it. No one applauded this time. Good. I turned, walked the length of the room, past my father. He didn't stop me. The doors opened. Cool air rushed in. The city waited. And as the boardroom sealed behind me, control loosened its grip. Grief moved through. Then something lighter. Something unclaimed. Something that felt, unexpectedly, like space. I slept for 12 hours. No dreams. No boardrooms. No training floors. Just dark. When I woke, it was to the unfamiliar sensation of not bracing. Light filtered through sheer curtains. The room smelled like coffee and something warm, bread maybe. For a moment I didn't know where I was, and the absence of recognition didn't spark panic. It felt quiet. My body was heavy in the way it gets after surviving something. Not sore, not tense, simply there. I pushed myself upright. The couch was too soft. A blanket had been draped over me without permission. My phone sat face down on the table, conspicuously silent. Christian was in the kitchen, barefoot, sleeves rolled, hair unstyled in a way that felt almost indecent. He glanced over his shoulder. "You're alive," he said, disappointing to the algorithm. "Give it time," I replied. My voice was rough. "It's only morning." He snorted, turned back to the stove. I stood slowly, aware of my own body in a way I rarely was. No dominance pressure in the air. No instinctual negotiation. My shoulders weren't tight. My jaw didn't ache. I walked into the kitchen. "What's that?" I asked. "An attempt at eggs," he said, "and a public apology to bread." I watched him move for a moment. Efficient, unguarded, real. He slid a plate toward me. "Eat." I did. The first bite was almost offensive. Warm, salty, actual flavor. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd tasted anything without analyzing its function. "This could kill someone," I said faintly. Finally, he replied. A successful strategy. A laugh escaped me before I could stop it. Not polite, not measured. It startled us both. Christian's eyes lifted, something bright and surprised moving through them. "You sound different," he said. "I feel heavier," I admitted. "In a good way. Gravity's useful," he said. "Keeps things from floating off into bad decisions." I took another bite. Silence settled, not awkward, companionable. I became aware of small things, the way the counter was cool under my palm, the way my breathing didn't hitch when he stepped closer to reach for coffee, the way my pulse didn't trip when our arms brushed. No one asserting, no one yielding, just space. "I should be panicking," I said quietly. "Give it an hour. I don't think I want to." He studied me, then nodded once. "Then don't." We ate. Talked about nothing. A book he hadn't finished. A terrible film he secretly loved. A regulatory consultant who tried to bribe him with homemade liquor and failed. At some point I leaned back and realized my head didn't hurt. My chest didn't feel compressed. I was tired, but not hunted. And in the quiet kitchen of a man who had once come to dismantle my life, warmth began to collect where fear used to live. The temporary workspace used to be a bankrupt fintech incubator. Exposed beams, half-frosted glass, desks that didn't match, wiring that hummed when the coffee machine ran. It was perfect. No legacy embedded in the walls. No scent history. No portraits of men who thought power was something you inherited. Just empty structure. We covered the central table in tablets, printed schematics, and handwritten notes. Christian worked standing, pacing in slow arcs when he thought. I stayed seated, drawing systems the way other people sketched faces. "You're building this like a nervous system," he observed, watching my screen. "That's what companies are," I replied. "Information and response. Everything else is branding." He leaned over my shoulder, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him, not the weight. "And this?" he asked, pointing to a layered flow. "Fail-safes," I said. "Ethical bottlenecks. Nothing high-risk moves unless 3 unrelated divisions agree. No silent overrides, no legacy permissions. You're designing distrust," he said. "I'm designing accountability," I corrected. "There's a difference." He studied it longer. "Your family would hate this." "Good." He smiled. We argued. About growth speed. About exposure. about whether a system should prevent corruption or reveal it quickly and let it die. Christian believed rot had to be visible to be stopped. I believed it had to be starved before it spread. The arguments never escalated. They refined. Every time we clashed, something clearer emerged. "I'll build the external shield," he said finally. "Investor structures, regulatory pressure, transparency mandates, to keep the system from being hijacked." I nodded. "And you'll build the inside, so it doesn't need defending." He considered that, then extended his hand. Not as an alpha, not as an offer of dominance. As a partner, I took it. The contact was brief, steady. It grounded something in both of us. As the days layered into weeks, the space began to change. Whiteboards filled. Teams assembled. Small, careful, curious people who asked why before how. No one cared what my last name was. They cared what I built. I designed oversight structures that couldn't be collapsed into one authority, profit flows that triggered audits when they grew too fast, internal counsels selected by rotation, not rank, a company that assumed failure was possible and prepared for it without sacrifice. Christian handled the outside world. Investors who tried to posture left frustrated. Those who listened stayed. He was sharp, but he never promised conquest, only resilience. One evening I leaned back in my chair and realized I was smiling at a projection of governance protocols. Christian noticed. "That's not normal," he said. "Neither is this," I replied, gesturing at the room. And yet, he looked around. The mismatched desks, the scattered minds, the absence of anyone at the head. "We're building something that doesn't need a patriarch," he said. The word echoed, and for the first time the idea of a future didn't tighten my chest. It opened it. The office was quiet in the way only late nights ever were. Most of the lights were off. Only the desk lamps remained, casting warm pools across scattered documents and half-erased whiteboards. The city beyond the windows had thinned into lines and distant motion, no longer demanding anything from us. Christian stood by the glass, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled, looking not at the skyline but at the reflection of the room. "Of me, you know," he said slowly. "I came here convinced you were just another beautifully trained instrument." I closed the file in front of me. "You've said something like that before." "Yes. And I was wrong." He turned. "You're not an exception inside a corrupt system. You were the system that refused to become corrupt." I felt the old reflex rise, the one that minimized, redirected, softened. I didn't let it. "That wasn't strength," I said. "It was fear. Of becoming them," he replied. "Yes." He moved closer. "Not into my space, into my attention. I misjudged you," he said quietly. "I thought you were disciplined because you lacked hunger, but you were disciplined because you had it, and chose not to let it decide who you were." The words settled in my chest. Heavy. True. "I don't know what to do with this," I admitted. "With what's happening between us, neither do I," he said. Then, after a beat, softer, "But I know what I don't want to do." I looked up. "Pretend it's strategy." The air changed. Not charged. Open. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Not dominance. Presence. "Matthew," he said. It was the first time he'd spoken my name without context. Not Hale. Not strategist. Just Matthew. Something in me shifted. A small, unarmored thing. I stepped forward before I could think better of it. Lifted my hand. This time, I touched him. Just his wrist. The contact was quiet. Deliberate. He didn't move to claim it. He didn't tighten. He turned his hand slightly so our palms met. That was all. And somehow it was more than enough. Our foreheads brushed. Breaths aligned. No instinct rose to categorize what we were doing. No hierarchy to negotiate. Just two people standing in a room they were building together, allowing something to exist without naming it dangerous. I closed my eyes. Let myself feel it. Not as risk. Not as weakness. As want. When his other hand came up to rest lightly at my side, I didn't flinch. Didn't shrink. Didn't brace. I leaned in. The contact was brief, soft, mouth to mouth, more promise than act. We pulled back almost immediately, both breathing differently, both aware, neither retreating. "This doesn't come with a rule book," I said quietly. Christian's mouth curved. "Good," he replied. "I don't trust anything that does." And in the quiet space between unfinished systems and unclaimed futures, connection took root. Not above us, not beneath, between. The launch didn't look like a conquest. No stage, no banners, no men in dark suits applauding themselves. Just a converted warehouse, morning light spilling through high windows, and a room full of people who looked curious rather than obedient. Our name glowed quietly on a wall display. No family crests, no founder's portrait, just a concept, a beginning. I stood near the back, coffee in hand, watching the team assemble around shared tables. Analysts I'd recruited because they asked uncomfortable questions. Engineers who talked about systems like ecosystems. Legal architects who treated loopholes like infections instead of tools. Christian moved through them with effortless focus, not commanding, not performing, listening, redirecting, introducing. He caught my eye once and lifted his cup in a small, private salute. Across the room, screens cycled through early projections, slow growth, transparent structures, mandatory internal review cycles. Nothing impressive to predators, everything impressive to me. A news feed scrolled silently on a side monitor. Hale holding stock volatile amid ongoing investigations. A smaller subline mentioned executive instability. Another mentioned unexpected structural weaknesses. I felt it, faintly, the old reflex, the tug of proximity, then nothing, no tightening, no ache, no desire to turn and look more closely. The Hale Empire was doing what all empires eventually did when no one was quietly stabilizing them. It was collapsing into itself. And for the first time, I was not part of the equation. Christian joined me. "Any regrets?" he asked. I considered the question honestly. The years, the loyalty, the quiet sacrifices, the name that had once felt like bone. "No," I said. "Just a strange sense of distance." He nodded. "That's what gravity feels like when it stops pulling you into the wrong orbit." We watched as one of our analysts accidentally knocked over a stack of tablets, swore, laughed, and immediately had 3 people kneeling to help. No one waited to be told. No one looked to the head of the room. I felt something settle, not triumph. Pride. The quiet kind. The kind that didn't need witnesses. "I thought walking away would feel like loss," I said. "But it feels like choosing." Christian glanced at me. "Choosing what?" I watched the team, the light, the unfinished boards waiting to be written on. "Life," I said. He smiled. Not the knife-edge one, the real one. And as the first meeting of a company that didn't yet know what it would become began without ceremony, I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't an heir. I wasn't a shield. I wasn't a function. I was standing inside something that hadn't existed until we decided to make it. And that was enough. Evenings in the office had developed a rhythm. The building emptied in soft stages, first the analysts, then legal, then the engineers who forgot to eat until someone reminded them. Lights dimmed in sections. Screens went dark one by one. The city outside slowed into a quieter language. Christian and I stayed. Not because we had to, because we liked the way the space sounded when it wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was revising an internal audit loop when a shadow fell across my desk. "You're doing it again," he said. "Preventing disasters? Pretending that's not domestic behavior." I glanced up. "I don't see you complaining." He leaned closer, resting his hip against the desk. "I'm documenting." I closed the file. He reached out without thinking and straightened the edge of my collar, a gesture so small and habitual it startled something warm into existence. No dominance in it, no claim, just familiarity. "Your people left you soup," he added, nodding toward the kitchenette. "They're not my people," I said automatically. He arched a brow. I corrected myself. "They are people." He smiled. We stood there, close, not performing anything. The office hummed around us, the quiet life of systems doing what they were meant to do. You know, he said, in most packs, someone like you would have been crushed. In most packs, someone like you would have done the crushing, I replied. Probably, he admitted. Then softer, and instead, we're here. I considered that. All the rooms I'd learned to survive, all the instincts I'd been taught to suppress or fear, all the ways strength had been framed as something loud, inherited, or sharp. I spent my life believing I was unfinished, I said. A version waiting to become real. Christian watched me. And now I think I was real the whole time, I replied. I just wasn't in a place that could recognize it. His hand found mine, not gripping, not guiding, resting. The contact anchored me in the present in a way no hierarchy ever had. Outside, the city reflected our lights back at us. Inside, something quiet settled. I wasn't a beta because I lacked something. I was a beta because I moved between. Because I connected. Because I held systems together long enough for something better to grow. I wasn't the heir to a pack. I was part of one we were building. And for the first time, the word didn't sound like a role. It sounded like home. Some packs are born. Others are chosen. And sometimes, the strongest thing a beta can do is refuse to bite and build instead.